Okay, so as I mentioned, with the first video I did, I'm in the book of Exodus, and it is just so much that is standing out to me. So the first thing I want to share is what I gathered out of reading Exodus chapter 2. And basically what I saw is how you can be so close to your calling, so close, like you feel it in you. You know what you're supposed to do, but when you're not operating actually in it, or what I'm trying to say is when you're trying to do it and you're trying to work it out, as opposed to letting God show you the way that it should be done, then you can find yourself so far off the bat. And so what it was is I was looking at Moses, and I was looking at his birth, the chaos around his birth, the chaos that surrounded his birth, but how it was that even with everything that was going on, he was called according to God's purpose. He had a calling on his life from infancy. I can identify with that. His mother was able to raise him. She was paid for raising her own child. Wow. She was paid for raising her own child. Raising him from infancy, no doubt, she was able to teach him a lot about his people, a lot about who he was before she handed him over to Pharaoh. I'm sorry, y'all, but that just spoke volumes to me. I'm about to read this. It says, "Now a man in the house of Levi married a Levite woman, and she became pregnant and gave birth to a son." Dang, that just spoke to me. I was like, okay, the Levites were at that time the ones who had the mantle of the priesthood on them. The Levites were the ones who had the mantle of the priesthood on them. They were the ones who were the servants of God. They were the ones that the ministry came through. I don't know any other, the worship service. They were worshipers. I don't know any other way to put it at this moment. So a man of the house of Levi married a Levite woman, which means that in her was also this mantle, this calling. She was a worshiper. She was about the Lord's business, for lack of a better way to put it. She gave birth to a son. When she saw that he was a fine child, she hid him for 3 months. But when she could no longer hide him, she got a papyrus basket for him, coated it with tar and pitch. She placed the child in it, put it among the reeds along the bank of the Nile. His sister stood at a distance to see what would happen to him. Then Pharaoh's daughter went down to the Nile to bathe. Pharaoh's daughter went down to the Nile to bathe, and her attendants were walking along the riverbank. She saw the basket among the reeds, sent the slave girl to get it. She opened it, saw the baby. He was crying. She felt sorry for him. "This is one of the Hebrew babies," she said. Then his sister asked Pharaoh's daughter, "Shall I go and get one of the Hebrew women to nurse the baby for you?" "Yes, go," she answered. And the girl went and got the baby's mother. Pharaoh's daughter said to her, take this baby and nurse him for me, and I will pay you. So the woman took the baby and nursed him. When the child grew older, she took him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. She named him Moses, saying, I drew him out of the water. So, okay, now I realize that Moses had an Egyptian name. I was always wondering, too, why some of the pharaohs of Egypt were named Thutmose. Moses is an Egyptian name. So I don't know. None of us knows what his Hebrew name would have been, because he was raised by the Egyptians, or if his mom did give him a Hebrew name, but we only know the Egyptian name. That's one thing that I don't know, that I look forward to finding out. I know God will show, and it doesn't necessarily have to be that I need to find out like today, tomorrow. It might be something that I find out years from that, but I look forward to that. But what stands out to me, number one, is that this woman nursed him. And as she nursed him, those early stages of life is very important. Very important. That's when you're shaping and able to mold a child. And so she nursed him, and she no doubt was able to tell him about who his people were. Because in the second 40 years of his life, we see Moses was watching or looking over his own people and watching them. And the fact that he knew that these was his people, it stands out. It stands out. But what stands out even more so was that this wasn't just an Israelite. See, it was the Israelites as a whole that was in Egypt. And as a whole, the Israelites were going through oppression and being treated ruthlessly, according to chapter 1. So that's not what stands out to me. In this chapter about Moses, what stands out to me is clearly this was a Levite man married to a Levite woman. So there was a balance there. This was a man who loved the Lord and who was about the Lord's business, who married a woman who loved the Lord and who was about the Lord's business. And this woman, being about the business of the Lord, made sure that she taught her children, even her son, before she released him back to Pharaoh's daughter, or sent him out into the world. She taught him. What are we teaching our children prior to their going out into the world? How are we preparing our children prior to their going out into the world? That's what stood out to me. That's what stood out to me. It says the sister asked Pharaoh's daughter, because his mom, his Levite mom, held him for 3 months until she couldn't hold him no more, hide him no more. And then she prepared him and sent him, had him watched over. That had to be hard for her to release her child like that, but she had him watched over by his big sister to see what would happen to him. And she no doubt was praying. I have been posting that it takes Moses in the mountaintop with his hands lifted with the help of Aaron and her in order for Joshua to win in the valley. So at this point in time, Moses' mama was somewhere else praying, no doubt, while he was in this basket floating down the Nile River with the daughter, with his sister watching over him. His sister was watching over him. That's something that look, this stuff is not getting past me. Am I my brother's keeper? That in itself is an encouragement to me. Am I my brother's keeper? Yes, I am. And I've been saying that, not even realizing what I've been saying until now. So it says, his sister stood at a distance to see what would happen to him. Then Pharaoh's daughter went down to the Nile to bathe, and her attendants were walking along the riverbank. She saw the basket among the reeds and sent her slave girl to get it. Now, the sister was not the slave girl. She opened it and saw the baby. He was crying, and she felt sorry for him. This is one of the Hebrew babies, she said. Then the sister, his sister, Moses' sister, asked Pharaoh's daughter, so now she has to come out. From wherever she was, she has to reveal herself. And she has to come out and say to Pharaoh's daughter, shall I go and get one of the Hebrew women to nurse the baby for you? The sister had to expose herself. Pharaoh's daughter could have easily snapped off, who is you? What is you doing over here? Blah, 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 blah. But she didn't, because she was enamored by this beautiful baby. So she says to Moses' sister, yes, go. She answered. And the girl went and got the baby's mother. Now, here's the thing. Because Moses' sister was there, she was able to go back and get her mom, Moses' mom, and bring her. Had it been somebody else, they would have picked anybody to raise Moses. But because Moses was raised by his own mother, who was a Levite woman, it made it clear to us that this was a Levite woman, somebody who was about the Lord's business, who was truly about the Lord's business, because that priesthood, that mantle of priesthood, was placed on the Levites. As a matter of fact, it wasn't even placed on the Levites at that time. But because that didn't happen till later. That didn't happen till later. But they had a love for them to even be able to do what they did later. They had to have a love for the Lord. They had to have had a love for the Lord, for them to be able to stand up the way they did, that family or that tribe. So anyway, she said, yes, go. The girl went, got the baby's mother. Pharaoh's daughter said to her, take this baby and nurse him for me, and I will pay you. So the woman took the baby and nursed him. When the child grew older, she took him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. She named him Moses, saying, I drew him out of the water. That's something that stands out to me. That really stands out to me. I'm going to end this one right here and leave this one about that. And I'll come back later with more.